You can think I'm lying. You wouldn't be the first. People hear my story and smirk, dismiss it as religious fantasy or old legend. But I saw it. I saw it with my own two eyes, and it has haunted me ever since, not with fear, but with awe. It was early in the day, the kind of morning that feels unfinished. A light fog still hung over the hills of Galilee, caught between the coolness of night and the heat that would soon arrive. The dust from yesterday's footsteps had not yet settled, and neither had my heart. I wasn't one of his followers, not yet. I was more of a shadow, a man hiding among the crowds, watching, listening, curious, and cautious. They called him Jesus of Nazareth. Some said he was a prophet. Others called him a liar. But the ones who had seen him, really seen him, couldn't stop talking about it. I had heard of his miracles, of demons fleeing at his voice, of fevers leaving with just a word, but still, I wasn't sure. So I followed, at a distance. And that's when it happened. We had just entered a quiet stretch between villages, a narrow dirt road lined by thorn bushes and scattered stones. Birds chirped faintly. People murmured. Children clung to their mothers' robes. Then out of nowhere, a cry split the silence. "Unclean! Unclean!" That sound, I will never forget it. It was the voice of a man, but hollow, broken, like the voice of someone who hadn't spoken in years and was only now remembering how. He was dragging himself forward from behind the trees, clothes torn, face wrapped in dirty linen. His hands were misshapen, his skin mottled, flaking, bruised with disease. The crowd screamed and backed away. It was a leper. You need to understand, in our world, leprosy wasn't just a sickness. It was a death sentence, not just of the body, but of the soul. Once diagnosed, you were cast out, banished. No hugs, no handshakes, no human touch. You were forced to live alone, on the edges of towns, begging for scraps, warning others to stay away with those words, "Unclean, unclean." And yet, this man, he came toward us. No one stopped him. They were too afraid. The disciples froze. Mothers shielded their children. Even the men known for their boldness stepped aside. Everyone moved, except Jesus. I was watching him closely. His eyes didn't flinch. His feet didn't step back. He didn't raise his arms to protect himself. He stepped forward. I felt the hair rise on my arms. What was he doing? The leper collapsed in the dirt, just a few feet from Jesus, and he cried, "Lord, if you are willing, you can make me clean." His voice cracked. His head hung low. It was against our laws, against our instincts, against everything we were taught about holiness. But Jesus, "I am willing," he said. "Be clean." I cannot explain what happened next. There was no flash of lightning, no wind, no thunder, just stillness. And then the man began to tremble. His body shook like a storm was moving through him, and before our eyes, his flesh began to change. The discolored skin gave way to healthy tone, his twisted hands straightened, the rot was gone. The open sores closed, his face, once covered in cloth, now clean, alive, whole. The crowd gasped. Some fell to their knees. The man stood, slowly, staring at his own arms in disbelief. He reached up and touched his own face, tears pouring down. He was weeping, not from pain, but from freedom. I saw it. I saw a man who hadn't felt another human touch in years be touched by God himself. I saw a man who had been sentenced to die, walk away, fully alive. Jesus leaned in and said something privately to the man. I couldn't hear it, but the man nodded, fell at his feet again, then rose and ran. He ran down the road, screaming not, unclean, but I'm healed, I'm whole. His voice echoed over the hills like a hymn. After a long silence, people began to speak. Some whispered, some wept, some stared, eyes wide and empty, trying to understand. But me? I couldn't move, because something in me broke. I had come to watch a man. Instead, I had seen God touch what no one else dared to touch. I thought he only healed bodies, but what I saw healed something deeper. He healed shame. He healed abandonment, isolation, hopelessness. That was the moment I knew. He wasn't just a teacher. He wasn't just a prophet. He was mercy made flesh. And if he could reach into the life of a man everyone gave up on, maybe he could reach into mine too. I thought I had seen the most incredible thing a man could witness. I thought nothing could surpass that moment, when a man, condemned by disease, walked away whole because Jesus had dared to touch him. But I was wrong. What I saw next went deeper. Not into the body, but into the soul. It happened just a few days later, near Jericho. The roads were hotter, dustier, noisier. Word about Jesus had spread like wildfire. Everywhere he went, the crowds swelled. People pressed in from every side, men shouting questions, women bringing sick children, old men reaching for his cloak with shaking hands. It was chaos, sacred chaos. And I was still there, still watching, still hiding. But no longer doubting. I wasn't the only one who had followed him from town to town. The crowd had grown into a sea, not of people, but of need. So many came wanting something, healing, hope, a second chance. And among them was a blind man. I didn't see him at first, but I heard him. A loud, desperate voice rising over the crowd. "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me!" At first, no one cared. Some rolled their eyes, others hissed at him to be quiet. "Silence, beggar," they barked. "Don't bother the teacher." But he shouted louder. "Son of David, have mercy on me!" And that's when Jesus stopped. Right there in the middle of the road, surrounded by noise and movement, he stopped. The air stilled. Then he turned and said, "Bring him to me." I watched as two men helped the beggar to his feet. He was covered in dust, his robe torn, his face sunburned and worn. But what struck me most were his eyes. They were open, but empty. Eyes that had never seen light, eyes that had known only darkness. They led him forward. And when he stood before Jesus, trembling, Jesus asked, "What do you want me to do for you?" I remember thinking, isn't it obvious? But then again, Jesus never asked questions because he didn't know the answers. He asked to invite the heart to speak, and the man whispered, "Lord, I want to see." That moment is burned into me like fire, not just because of what he said, but because of how he said it. Not with arrogance, not with entitlement, but with raw, broken longing. Like someone who had spent his whole life in a prison and finally smelled freedom on the other side of the door. Jesus smiled. Then he placed his hands on the man's face, gently, like a father holding the cheeks of a child, and he said, "Receive your sight. Your faith has made you well." And in an instant, it happened. The man blinked. His head jolted slightly, like he was hit by something invisible. And then he began to cry. He turned his head side to side, gasping, laughing, weeping all at once. He was seeing, really seeing. The sky, the faces, the trees, the road, his own hands. And then his eyes fell on Jesus. That was the moment that undid me, because the look on his face wasn't just wonder. It was worship. Not the kind you learn in a synagogue, the kind that erupts from a soul that has just touched the edge of eternity. He fell to his knees, buried his face in the robe of the one who had healed him. And the crowd? They exploded. Some shouted, some sang, some stood in stunned silence. The once disbelieving murmurs gave way to praise, real praise, praise that came from the gut, the kind that only comes when heaven breaks into earth. But even in all the noise, I noticed something. Jesus just smiled. Then gently helped the man to his feet, whispered something to him, and continued walking. He didn't wait for applause. He never did. He healed and moved on. Because for Jesus, the miracle was never the end. It was just the invitation. And me? I couldn't move. I stood there, shaking, tears on my face, dust in my lungs, heart burning. Because I realized something. That man didn't just receive sight, he received vision. Not just the ability to see trees and people and light. He saw truth. He saw hope. He saw the Messiah. And I realized I was the blind one. I had been watching Jesus for days, hearing him teach, seeing him heal, but I had never really seen him. Not like that man did. It wasn't about the eyes. It was about the heart. That day, Jesus healed a man's sight, but he also healed my blindness, and he's still doing it. He's still stopping when no one else will, still hearing the voices others ignore, still touching the broken, still answering the cries we're too afraid to speak out loud. He's still opening eyes, not just the eyes